Hello again. In today's video, what I'm going to talk about a little bit is how to write critically. So when you're in a degree program, you're required to write critically, particularly as you get onto the final year of the degree. And I find that students often find this just a little bit confusing, sort of what does it mean? It's actually very straightforward. Two things to remember: context and credibility. So we start first of all with credibility. This is basically what's your source? Where are you getting this source from? Clearly, if you're getting your source from a meme or from Facebook or something, you are really wasting your time. What we're normally looking for is journal papers, and the reason we look for journal papers is that those are written with the sole intention of exploring and developing new knowledge. So a journal typically looks a little bit like this, although of course you'll now use an electronic version of it. Effectively, if you are accessing a journal online, it's the equivalent to accessing a paper one. You can spot them a mile off because they tend to be quite plain, quite boring, although incredibly interesting if that's what you're into. And of course, it's just a collection of articles written usually by people who are working in universities or equivalent, and people who are just trying to push the boundaries of knowledge. So what you're looking at is relatively up to date. It is challenging, questioning in its own right, often written in a critical style. And effectively, it is new knowledge that's been developed. Okay, so it's pushing boundaries. So that's the kind of boss one, if you like. Next to that, we have our sort of general textbook. And of course, the general textbook is really just like a self-help guide. It's a how-to set of instructions. So by the time you get on the final year of a degree, you should have moved beyond that sort of general textbook. That's a kind of a recipe book, if you like. So it's brilliant for learning, but not necessarily for critical thought. This is telling you how to dissect things, if you like, but not how to think critically. So, first of all, the credibility of the source. Make sure it's from a journal, ideally, or from a textbook that's pushing the boundaries. Do some research on the author if you get a chance to, just to see what other papers they've published in this field, to see that they are someone renowned and pushing the boundaries in that sort of area. And again, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's online, providing it's a recognised journal. You can look at journal rankings online if you're really interested, and it can show you the way in which those are ranked, and they're ranked by how often they're cited by other people. So once we get out of the way, and nobody hopefully is using a tabloid newspaper or a meme, the next thing is to think about context. The context in which the paper was written. You see, for example, I can tell you that I love pizza, I love my partner, and I love our children. And you'll understand that those three different loves mean something completely different each time. And that's because it's context. So the same sort of thing applies with a journal paper. A journal paper written in the context of looking, say, at American industry is based around the American cultural context. That may limit it when you're applying it to perhaps industrial context in Southern Europe, for example. So have a think about the context in which the paper was written. Maybe it's geographic location, maybe think about the types of people under study or whatever under consideration. It doesn't matter about the field. There will still be a context related to it. Perhaps if you're doing the sports field, it's elite athletes as opposed to amateur athletes. Perhaps if you're looking at, in a sociological perspective, it's referring to one social group as opposed to another, or one geographic location as opposed to another. This doesn't invalidate the paper, but what it does mean is that the paper may be context specific. So that's something to explore in your writing. So as you use the theories from this paper, there would be a sort of a however, or it has to be considered, or it has to be borne in mind that this author or this paper was referring to a specific context. So we can examine things in that way. See, what we're trying to do on the final year of a degree and beyond, of course, is move ourselves from a kind of a description, if you like, to a critical understanding. It's, if you like, it's moving from knowing when Marx was born to knowing what Marx's theory is, to being able to apply Marx's theory to the rise of Donald Trump, or knowing what Porter's five forces are, or being able to explain the analysis of Porter's five forces, to being able to examine a specific change, so the growth of Facebook related to Porter's five forces, but of course being able to critically examine why Porter's five forces may not be appropriate for application towards a company with the sort of novel features that Facebook have. So it's not a matter of disrespecting anybody, it's not a matter of being cynical, and certainly not a matter of trying to find holes, if you like. Rather, it's just a matter of examining context and trying to understand that the theory that you're using was written at a specific time for a specific purpose, perhaps with a specific group of people in mind, and that might not always apply. So we are not correcting the past, if you like, but we are accepting the past and accepting the context in which that past found itself, and then not allowing that to cloud our judgment as to current situations. So, two things. Think about the credibility of the source and the context in which it's written. If you start that off with your critical analysis, you won't go far wrong. And you are looking, as I said, not to repeat somebody else's view, but actually to find your own way in this and to examine and explore those contradictions that come up and those context-specific points, and let that develop in your piece of writing, and that will lead you to write some wonderful critical essays. And every luck with your degrees, and I hope you do well. Thank you.